The dust rose in clouds behind Olivia Langford's wagon as she pulled into Ellsworth, Kansas on a scorching June afternoon in 1872. Her eyes burning not from the grit, but from the realization that she was returning to her dead husband's land alone with nothing but debts and dried-up fields. She had buried Thomas 3 months ago in Denver after a mining accident. And now, at 24 years old, she faced the impossible task of making something of the 200 acres he had claimed before gold fever had pulled him away from farming. The property sat 5 miles outside town, and as she guided the horses down the rutted path, her heart sank at the sight of withered crops and cracked earth stretching as far as she could see. The house stood weathered but intact, its wooden frame bleached gray by the relentless sun. Olivia climbed down from the wagon, her black mourning dress heavy and hot, and walked through rooms thick with dust and memories. Thomas had been a dreamer, always chasing the next big opportunity, never content to work the land he had. She had loved him despite his restlessness, but love had not saved him from a collapsing mine shaft, and it would not save her now from poverty and ruin. She spent that first night cleaning, pushing furniture around, trying to make the place feel less like a tomb. When dawn broke, she walked out to survey the fields properly. The irrigation ditches Thomas had dug were filled with dirt and debris. The wooden channels he had built were broken and useless. She knew nothing about farming, had grown up in St. Louis as a merchant's daughter, but Thomas had left her this land and she was determined not to lose it. The bank in town held a note for $300, due in 6 months. Without a successful harvest, she would lose everything. Olivia walked into Ellsworth the next morning, her morning dress exchanged for a simple gray work dress, her dark hair pinned severely back. The town bustled with cattle drovers and railroad workers, men who stared at her with curiosity and occasionally something less welcome. She kept her eyes forward and made her way to the general store, where she asked the proprietor about books on farming and irrigation. Books? The man scratched his graying beard. Most folks around here learn by doing, madam, but I can order some from Kansas City if you like. Take a few weeks, though. Please do, Olivia said, counting out coins she could barely afford to spare. Anything on water management and crop cultivation for this climate. As she turned to leave, the proprietor called after her. Madam, if you are wanting to learn about irrigation quick-like, you should talk to Warren Keller. Has the ranch about 10 miles north of here. Best water management in 3 counties. Keeps his cattle fat and his fields green even in drought years. Olivia paused at the door. Pride warred with necessity. She needed help, and she needed it now, not in a few weeks when books might arrive. Thank you, she said quietly and stepped back into the bright morning. The ride to the Keller ranch took 2 hours. Olivia had borrowed a horse from the livery, promising payment at month's end. Another debt added to her growing list. The landscape changed as she rode north, the parched earth giving way to greener pastures. She saw cattle grazing, their coats glossy and healthy, and fields of wheat swaying in the breeze. Water flowed through carefully constructed channels, a network of irrigation that seemed almost miraculous compared to the cracked earth of her own property. The ranch house was substantial, built of good timber with a wide porch. Outbuildings dotted the landscape, all well maintained. As Olivia approached, a man emerged from the barn, tall and broad-shouldered, his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned, muscular forearms. He was perhaps 30, with light brown hair that caught the sun and eyes that assessed her with sharp intelligence. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice deep and even. Olivia dismounted, suddenly aware of how she must look, dusty from the road and probably half wild from worry. "Are you Warren Keller?" "I am," My name is Olivia Langford. I own the property 5 miles south of Ellsworth, the old Patterson place that my late husband claimed. I need to learn about irrigation, and I was told you are the man to ask." Warren studied her for a long moment. "The Patterson place is in bad shape. Seen it myself when I rode through last month. Your husband passed 3 months ago. Mining accident in Denver." Olivia lifted her chin, refusing to show the grief that still caught her at unexpected moments. "I intend to make the farm work." In 6 months before harvest, with no experience, Warren's tone was not unkind, but it was blunt. "Madam, that is a hard road you are setting yourself on. Nevertheless, it is my road." Olivia met his eyes steadily. "Will you help me or not? I can pay you, though not much, and not right away. But I am a fast learner, and I am not afraid of work." Warren removed his hat, ran a hand through his hair, and settled the hat back on his head. "I do not need payment, Mrs. Langford, but I will tell you straight that what you are attempting is not easy. The land is more than dirt and seed. It needs understanding." "Then teach me to understand it." Something shifted in Warren's expression, a slight softening around his eyes. "Come into the house. We will talk about what you are up against." The interior of Warren's home was clean and orderly, surprisingly so for a bachelor's residence. He poured them both water from a clay pitcher, cold and fresh, and they sat at a solid oak table. "How much land are you working?" Warren asked. 200 acres. About 40 were planted before my husband left for Denver, but without proper irrigation, everything died or never took properly. Warren nodded. "The problem with land around here is not that we do not get rain. It is that the rain comes all at once or not at all, and the soil does not hold moisture well. You need a system that captures water when it comes and distributes it when it does not. What do you have now? Broken ditches, collapsed channels." "I spent yesterday clearing debris, but I do not know what I am meant to be building." "Then we start from the beginning." Warren stood and walked to a shelf, pulling down a leather-bound journal filled with sketches and notes. He laid it open on the table, showing her diagrams of water flow, channel construction, and field layout. "This is 10 years of learning what works and what does not. I came out here when I was 20 with money from my father and more ambition than sense. Lost my first 2 crops completely. Nearly lost the ranch." Olivia leaned over the journal, studying the careful drawings. "How did you turn it around?" "Stubbornness, mostly. And an old Mexican farmer named Sebastian who took pity on me and showed me techniques his people had been using for generations. Irrigation is not just about moving water. It is about reading the land, understanding where water wants to go and working with it instead of against it." He pointed to one diagram. "See here. You want your main channel running along the high points of your property, then smaller ditches branching down following the natural slope. Gravity does the work for you." "My land is fairly flat," Olivia said. "Then we make our own slope, grade it carefully. It is possible, just takes more work." Warren looked at her seriously. "Mrs. Langford, I am willing to help you, but you need to understand what you are committing to. This will be dawn to dusk labor for weeks. You will be digging ditches, moving earth, building channels. Your hands will blister and bleed. You will be so tired some nights you will wonder if it is worth it." "I already wonder that," Olivia said quietly. "But the alternative is losing everything Thomas left me, going back to St. Louis in defeat and living on my brother's charity. I would rather bleed." Warren held her gaze for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, then. We start tomorrow. I will ride over to your place at dawn and we will assess what you have and what you need." Relief flooded through Olivia, so intense she felt momentarily dizzy. "Thank you, Mr. Keller. Truly." "Warren," he said, "if we are going to be digging ditches together, we can dispense with formalities." Olivia, then. She managed a small smile, the first genuine one in months. True to his word, Warren arrived at her property just after sunrise the next morning, leading a pack mule loaded with tools and surveying equipment. Olivia had been awake for an hour already, her hair braided back and wearing the oldest dress she owned, prepared for hard labor. Warren walked the property with her, stopping frequently to examine the soil, the existing ditches, and the natural contours of the land. He made notes in a small book and occasionally drove stakes into the ground. By mid-morning, he had a plan. "You have a well here that is still good," he said, pointing to the stone-lined well behind the house. "And there is a seasonal creek that runs along your western border. When did it last have water? I do not know. It has been dry since I arrived. It will run again when the rains come, probably late July if we are lucky. We need to build a system that captures that water when it flows and stores it. We will dig a retention pond here." He indicated a low spot in the western field. "Then channels from the pond to your fields with gates so you can control the flow." "How long will that take?" Warren looked at her seriously. "With just the two of us. 6 weeks of hard work to get a basic system in place. Then you need to plant and pray we get enough rain to fill that pond." 6 weeks. Olivia calculated quickly. That would take them into early August. Barely time for a late planting to mature before the first frost. It was a desperate gamble, but it was the only chance she had. "Then we should start now," she said. They began with the retention pond, marking out an area about 30 feet across and 6 feet deep at its center. Warren showed Olivia how to use a spade efficiently, how to drive it with her foot and lever with her weight rather than just her arms. Within an hour, her shoulders ached. By noon, her hands were burning despite the work gloves Warren had brought her. She kept digging. Warren worked beside her, moving earth at twice her pace but never making her feel inadequate. Instead, he talked as they worked, explaining the theory behind what they were doing. "Water is like money," he said, tossing a shovelful of dirt onto the growing pile. "You have to save it when you have it so you can use it when you do not. That pond is your bank." "And the channels are how I spend it," Olivia said, understanding. "Exactly. But you have to spend it wisely. Give each plant what it needs but not so much that you waste it." They broke for lunch in the shade of Olivia's house. She had prepared cold chicken and bread with water from the well. Warren ate with the efficient hunger of a man used to physical labor. "You did well this morning," he said. "Most people give up after the first hour. I told you I was not afraid of work. There is a difference between not being afraid and actually doing it. You have proved you can do it." Warren leaned back against the porch post, his eyes distant. "Can I ask you something personal?" Olivia tensed slightly. "You can ask. Why did your husband leave the farm for mining? This is good land, hard land but good." It was a fair question, and Olivia found she wanted to answer it honestly. Thomas was always looking for the quick fortune. Farming is patient work, and patience was never his strength. He heard about silver strikes in Colorado and convinced himself we would be rich within a year. I asked him to stay to give the farm a real chance, but he had made up his mind. She paused, old pain mixing with current exhaustion. "I think he loved the idea of things more than the reality of them." "And you?" "I love what is real, even when it is hard." Warren nodded slowly, and something in his expression made Olivia think he understood exactly what she meant. They returned to work, and the afternoon stretched long and hot. By the time the sun began to set, Olivia could barely lift her arms. Warren noticed her flagging. "Enough for today. You will hurt yourself if you push too hard at the start. This is a long race, not a sprint." Olivia wanted to protest but knew he was right. "Same time tomorrow. I will be here." After Warren left, Olivia barely managed to wash the dirt from her skin before collapsing into bed. Every muscle screamed. Her hands, even with gloves, had raised blisters. But beneath the pain was a strange satisfaction. She had moved earth, changed the shape of the land with her own labor. It was the first time since Thomas died that she felt like she had any control over her fate. The pattern continued for days. Warren arrived at dawn. They worked until the heat became dangerous around midday, rested, then worked again until evening. The retention pond took shape, its walls sloping and solid. Warren taught Olivia how to pack the earth so it would hold water, how to create a spillway so excess would not erode their work. As they labored side by side, conversation flowed naturally. Warren told her about growing up in Ohio, the youngest of 4 sons, with no farm to inherit and no desire to work in his father's dry goods store. "I wanted land of my own," he said, "something I built with my own hands. Kansas was opening up after the war, and I had just enough money to make a start. It seemed like a sign." "Do you regret it?" Olivia asked, smoothing the wall of the pond with the back of her spade. "There were days that first year when I thought I had made the biggest mistake of my life. I was alone, I was failing, and I was too proud to admit it and go home." Warren paused in his work. "But then things started to work. The land responded to proper care. I learned to read the weather, to understand the rhythms of this place. Now I cannot imagine being anywhere else." "You never married," came close once. "Girl from town, Margaret Swanson. Pretty, practical, everything a rancher could want in a wife." Warren's voice was neutral, but Olivia detected something beneath it. She decided she wanted more than a struggling ranch and a man who smelled like cattle. "Married a banker from Topeka." "I am sorry. Do not be. She made the right choice for her, and I made the right choice for me. The ranch needed all my attention those first years. A wife would have deserved better than what I could give." He looked at Olivia then, really looked at her. "What about you? Did you love him, your husband?" It was a bold question, perhaps too personal, but something about the work they shared, the honesty of physical labor, made pretense seem pointless. "Yes," Olivia said. "I loved who he was when we met, when he was full of dreams and possibility. But people change, or maybe they just become more of what they always were. By the end, I loved the memory of him more than the reality." "That is a lonely way to be married." "Yes," Olivia agreed quietly. "It was." By the 3rd week, the retention pond was complete, a satisfying bowl of packed earth ready to receive water. They moved on to the main irrigation channel, running it from the western property line, where the seasonal creek would flow into the pond, then out again toward the fields. This was more technical work, requiring careful grading to maintain a steady slope. Warren brought surveying equipment, teaching Olivia how to use the level and sight lines. "If your slope is too steep, water rushes through and erodes everything," he explained. "Too shallow, and it sits and stagnates. You want it just right so it flows steady and clean." Olivia discovered she had an aptitude for the precise work. Her merchant father had taught her mathematics and measurement, skills considered unusual for a woman but which now proved invaluable. She calculated grades and distances while Warren did the heavy digging, and together they created channels that flowed exactly as they should. One afternoon, as they rested in the shade with the water jug between them, Warren said, "You have a good mind for this. Most people cannot think in 3 dimensions the way you do, seeing how water will move through space." The compliment warmed Olivia more than it probably should have. "My father used to say I could have run his business if I had been born male. He meant it as praise, but it always felt like mourning what I could not be. Out here, what you can do matters more than what you were born as," Warren said. I have seen women run ranches as well as any man, and men fail despite every advantage. The land does not care about convention. Society cares, though. Society, Warren said with a slight edge, is not standing in this field digging ditches with us. Olivia laughed, surprised by the sound coming from her own throat. When had she last laughed? Not since before Thomas died, certainly. Maybe not for months before that. Warren smiled at her laughter, and Olivia noticed for the first time how it changed his face, softening the hard lines carved by sun and work. He was handsome, she realized, not in a refined way but in the solid, dependable manner of a man completely at ease in his own skin. The realization made her uncomfortable and she stood quickly, brushing dust from her skirt. We should get back to work. Daylight is wasting. If Warren noticed her sudden fluster, he did not comment, simply standing and picking up his shovel. By the end of the 4th week, the main channel was complete, and smaller ditches branched into the fields. Warren showed Olivia how to build wooden gates that could be raised or lowered to control water flow to different sections. The work was intricate, requiring careful carpentry, and Warren's hands moved with practiced skill as he fitted boards and drove pegs. Olivia found herself watching those hands more than was strictly necessary, noticing the efficiency of movement, the strength tempered with precision. She caught herself and looked away, focusing on learning the technique rather than admiring the teacher. "You try," Warren said, handing her the mallet. "It is not as hard as it looks." It was exactly as hard as it looked, and Olivia's first attempt resulted in a crooked gate that would not sit properly in its frame. Warren did not laugh at her frustration, just quietly showed her again how to measure twice and cut once, how to test the fit before driving it home. Her second attempt was better, and by the 3rd gate she had the feel of it. Warren watched her work with approval. "You are a natural. By the time we finish this, you will be able to maintain the whole system yourself." "That is the goal," Olivia said, but the words came out more sharply than she intended. The truth was, she had stopped thinking about Warren eventually leaving. His presence had become part of the rhythm of her days, something she counted on like sunrise. The idea of managing alone again felt suddenly daunting. Warren heard the edge in her voice and set down his tools. "Olivia, what is wrong?" "Nothing. I am just tired." "You have been tired for weeks. You have never been short with me before." She could not explain without revealing too much, so she deflected. "How much longer until we are finished? I have lost track of time." Warren calculated mentally. "The basic system will be done in another week, maybe less. Then we need to plant, and that is a whole different kind of work." "Why?" "I just need to know what to expect, how long I can count on your help." Understanding crossed Warren's face. "You think I am going to disappear once the hard work is done? Everyone leaves eventually. That is what I have learned." Warren stepped closer, and Olivia felt her breath catch. He was near enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, could smell the honest scent of work and sun on his skin. "I am not everyone," he said quietly, "and I made a commitment to see this through. I do not break my word." "People break their word all the time," Olivia said, but her voice had lost its sharp edge. "Not me. Not to you." Warren held her gaze for a long moment, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of feeling neither was quite ready to name. Then he stepped back, creating a safe distance. "Come on. We have 3 more gates to build before dark." They worked in silence for a while, but it was a comfortable silence. The tension eased. Olivia felt foolish for her outburst, but also strangely relieved. Warren had not dismissed her concern or made light of it. He had simply promised to stay, and somehow she believed him. The irrigation system was completed on a blazing afternoon in late July. Olivia and Warren stood at the western property line, looking at the network of channels and ditches that now crisscrossed the land. It was empty still, waiting for water, but the potential was clear. "It is beautiful," Olivia said, and meant it. The clean lines of the channels, the careful grading, the gates positioned precisely where they needed to be. It was functional art, human ingenuity working with natural forces. "It is good work," Warren agreed. "We did well. You did well, I just helped." "That is not true. You designed half these field channels yourself, and your gates are as solid as mine. You should be proud." Olivia was proud, she realized. More than that, she was transformed. The woman who had arrived 6 weeks ago, hollow with grief and fear, had been replaced by someone stronger. Her hands were calloused, her skin tanned despite the bonnet she wore. Her body was lean with muscle, her mind sharp with new knowledge. She felt competent in a way she never had before. "Thank you," she said to Warren, "for all of this. I could not have done it without you. You are welcome." But the hardest part is still coming. Planting, planting, and waiting and hoping the rains come. You can have the best irrigation in Kansas, but if the sky does not cooperate, you will still fail. Farming requires faith as much as work. "I am not sure I have faith anymore," Olivia admitted. "I used to before Thomas died. I believed things happened for a reason, that hard work and virtue were rewarded. Now I know better." Warren was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the distant horizon. "Faith is not believing everything will work out. It is believing the effort matters even if it does not. You keep planting, keep irrigating, keep trying because the trying itself has value." "Does that make sense?" "No," Olivia said, "but I think I understand what you mean anyway." They began planting the next day. Warren had brought seed from his own stores, wheat and corn varieties he knew would tolerate the Kansas climate. He taught Olivia the spacing and depth for each type, how to cover the seed properly, and pack the earth just enough. The work was different from building the irrigation system, more meditative and less physically demanding. They moved through the fields in parallel rows, Warren planting while Olivia followed, covering and packing. The sun beat down, but the labor had a rhythm that was almost peaceful. "Tell me about St. Louis," Warren said as they worked. "What was your life like before?" Olivia thought back to that other world which felt impossibly distant now. "Comfortable, I suppose. My father owned a successful dry goods business. We had a nice house, servants, all the things that were supposed to make a woman content. I went to church socials and learned needlework and how to manage a household." Sounds stifling. It was, though I did not fully realize it at the time. I thought marriage would give me more freedom, a household of my own to run. Thomas seemed like an adventure compared to the respectable young men my father approved of. She paused, remembering. He was exciting, full of plans and dreams. I thought I was choosing passion over safety. "And you got neither in the end." The observation was blunt but accurate. "No, I suppose I did not. What about you? What did you think your life would be when you were young?" Warren considered as he placed seed in the earth with practiced precision. "I thought I would work for my father until he retired, then take over the store. Marry a local girl, have children, live a predictable life. It seemed inevitable. What changed? I did. I woke up one morning when I was 19 and realized I was suffocating. The store, the town, the entire future mapped out for me. It felt like a cage. I picked a fight with my father that same day, told him I was leaving. We barely spoke for 2 years after. You speak now. We reconciled before he passed 5 years ago. He never really understood why I left, but he eventually accepted it. Even admitted he was proud of what I had built, though it nearly killed him to say so." Warren straightened, stretching his back. I think parents always want their children to be like them, and it is hard when we turn out to be ourselves instead. Olivia nodded, understanding completely. They worked until the sun began to set, covering a full 2 acres with seed. It was a start, and if the weather cooperated, they would have the entire 40 acres planted within 2 weeks. The days fell into a new pattern. Plant in the morning, check and maintain the irrigation system in the afternoon, plan for the next day in the evening. Warren still went home each night to tend his own ranch, but he was back every dawn, reliable as the sunrise. Something was shifting between them, subtle but undeniable. Conversations grew longer and more personal. Silences became comfortable rather than awkward. Olivia caught Warren watching her sometimes with an expression she could not quite read, and she knew he caught her doing the same. One evening, as they sat on Olivia's porch reviewing the planting progress, Warren said, "There is a dance in town this Saturday, to celebrate the railroad anniversary. Would you want to go?" Olivia's heart jumped, then settled into an irregular rhythm. "I am still in mourning. It would not be appropriate. You have been widowed 4 months now, and you were apart from your husband longer than that before he died. I am not suggesting anything improper, just a dance between friends. You deserve an evening that is not about work and worry. Friends." The word should have been safe and comfortable, but instead it felt like a limitation Olivia was not sure she wanted. "I am not sure I remember how to dance," she said, deflecting. "It will come back to you. Like planting, you just need to find the rhythm." Olivia looked at Warren, really looked at him. In the fading light, his face was open and hopeful in a way she had not seen before. He was not just being kind. He wanted to spend time with her away from the farm, wanted to see her in a dress instead of work clothes, wanted something that felt dangerously close to courtship. "All right," she said, before she could talk herself out of it. "I will go." Warren's smile was worth any breach of propriety. "I will pick you up at 7. Saturday arrived faster than Olivia expected. She spent the afternoon torn between excitement and guilt, telling herself it was just a dance, just an evening of harmless diversion. But as she pulled out her best dress, a deep blue silk she had not worn since before Thomas died, she knew she was lying to herself. The truth was, she had feelings for Warren Keller. When those feelings had started, she could not say. Maybe the first day when he had agreed to help her without asking for payment. Maybe the second week when his patient teaching had made her feel capable instead of helpless. Maybe yesterday when he had laughed at something she said, and the sound had made her heart feel light for the first time in months. Whenever it had begun, it was real now and undeniable and terrifying. When Warren arrived, driving a clean buggy with a horse that gleamed from fresh grooming, he wore a suit that transformed him from rancher to gentleman. Olivia met him at the door in her blue dress, her hair pinned up in a style she had not attempted in years, and saw his eyes widen. "You look beautiful," he said, and there was nothing performative about the compliment. It was simple truth, offered with quiet sincerity. "You clean up well yourself," Olivia managed, her voice steadier than her pulse. The ride into Ellsworth was pleasant, the evening air finally cooling after the day's heat. They talked easily, about nothing important and everything at once. Olivia felt young again, like a girl on her first real outing with a man she liked. The feeling was wonderful and guilt-inducing in equal measure. The dance was held in the town hall, which had been decorated with bunting and lanterns. A small band played enthusiastically if not expertly, and the floor was crowded with couples. Olivia saw curious glances as she entered with Warren, knew there would be talk, but found she did not care as much as she thought she would. Warren led her onto the floor for a waltz, and Olivia discovered her body remembered what her mind had forgotten. She followed his lead naturally, and they moved together with surprising grace. "See," Warren said, smiling down at her, "just like planting, find the rhythm. Everything is like farming to you. Farming is life. Birth, growth, harvest, rest, then starting again. What else is there?" "Love," Olivia said, then immediately wished she could take the word back. But Warren did not pull away or make it awkward. "Love is part of it. The most important part, really. You cannot farm successfully if you do not love the land. It takes too much to do it just for money or survival." "Do you love your land?" "Yes, but it is a lonely love sometimes, caring for something that cannot care back." His eyes were serious now, searching hers. "I think there has to be room for more than that, for human connection. Do not you? I thought I had that once. I was wrong." "You were not wrong. You just chose someone who was not capable of choosing you back the same way. That does not mean you are incapable of love, Olivia. It means you are capable of more than you got." The song ended, but they stood still on the floor for a moment, the words hanging between them. Then another song began, faster and lighter, and the spell broke. They danced 3 more dances, then took a break for punch and conversation with other townspeople. Several women approached Olivia, offering condolences on her husband's death, and thinly veiled curiosity about her relationship with Warren. She answered politely but vaguely, giving them nothing to build gossip on. Warren, she noticed, was easy and friendly with everyone but kept returning to her side as if pulled by invisible threads. As the evening wound down, Warren drove her home under a sky brilliant with stars. The Kansas prairie stretched around them, vast and dark and somehow comforting in its endlessness. "I had a wonderful time," Olivia said as they pulled up to her house. "Thank you for asking me. I am glad you came. I was worried you would say no." "I almost did." Olivia looked at him in the dim light from the buggy lamps. "Warren, I need to be honest with you. I do not know what I am doing here. 4 months ago my husband died, and I am still sorting through what I feel about that. I should not be having feelings for anyone else." "It is too soon, too complicated." "Feelings are always complicated," Warren said gently. "And there is no timetable that makes sense for everyone. You feel what you feel when you feel it." "What do you feel?" The question was bold, but Olivia needed to know. Warren set the brake on the buggy and turned to face her fully. "I feel like I have been waiting my whole life to meet someone like you. Someone strong and smart and brave enough to fight for what matters. I feel like every day working beside you has been a gift. And I feel like if I do not kiss you right now, I am going to regret it for the rest of my life." Olivia's breath caught. She should say no, should maintain propriety and respect, and all the things a widow was supposed to do. Instead, she leaned toward him, closing the distance between them. Warren met her halfway, and his lips touched hers with a gentleness that made her ache. It was nothing like kissing Thomas, all hurried passion and conquest. This was patient and deep, a question and answer at once. Olivia felt herself melting into it, her hand coming up to rest against Warren's chest where she could feel his heart beating as fast as her own. When they finally pulled apart, Warren rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks." "So have I," Olivia admitted. "I just was not ready to want it. And now I am terrified and exhilarated and completely confused." She laughed shakily. "But I know I want to do it again." Warren obliged, kissing her once more before reluctantly pulling back. "I should let you go inside before I forget to be a gentleman." Olivia climbed down from the buggy, feeling unsteady in the best possible way. "Will I see you tomorrow?" "Every tomorrow you will have me," Warren said. "For planting, for irrigation, for whatever you need." "What about for what I want?" Warren's smile was slow and warm. "Especially for that." The next weeks were a blend of hard work and growing intimacy. They finished planting the 40 acres, then waited for rain. The irrigation system stood ready, but the seasonal creek remained dry and the sky cloudless. Olivia tried not to worry, but as July turned to August with no precipitation, fear crept in. "We need rain soon," she said one afternoon, staring at the empty channels. "The seed is in the ground, but without water it will never germinate." "It will come," Warren said with the confidence of experience. "The patterns shift in late summer. We will get storms. And if we do not, then we deal with that when it happens. You cannot farm by borrowing trouble from the future." Olivia tried to take comfort in his certainty, but the bank note loomed in her mind. 3 months left and nothing growing in her fields to distract herself. She asked Warren to teach her about livestock. "If the crops fail, I will need another source of income. You said you keep cattle. Could my land support them?" "Some, yes. You have good grazing on the west section, and with the irrigation system you could grow hay for winter feed." Warren looked thoughtful. "I could sell you some starter stock, young cows ready to breed. You would not see profit for a year or more, but it would give you something." "How many could I afford?" Warren named a price that made Olivia wince, but was not impossible. "I could manage 5, maybe 6 head. Is that enough to start?" "It is enough to learn on." "Cattle are different from crops, Olivia. They need constant attention, daily care. You cannot plant them and walk away." "Show me," she said simply. So Warren brought her to his ranch and taught her about cattle, how to read their health by their eyes and coat, how to move them without spooking them, how to prepare feed and check for illness. Olivia absorbed it all, adding animal husbandry to her growing knowledge of agriculture. They worked closely, Warren's hand occasionally steadying hers on a nervous cow, his voice calm in her ear as he explained a technique. The casual touches felt electric, and Olivia knew they were becoming more than friends, more than teacher and student. They were becoming partners. One evening, as they sat on Warren's porch watching the sunset after a day of working cattle, Olivia said, "I never thanked you properly for all this. You have given me months of your time, your knowledge, your resources. I can never repay you. I do not want repayment." "Then what do you want?" Warren looked at her, his eyes serious. "I want you to succeed. I want to see your fields green and your cattle fat. I want to wake up knowing I will spend the day with you." He paused, then continued quietly. "And when you are ready, when enough time has passed that you feel right about it, I want to court you properly. With intention and commitment. I want the chance to make you happy." Olivia's throat tightened with emotion. "You already make me happy. These past months, despite all the worry and work, have been some of the best of my life. That probably makes me a terrible person, being happy so soon after losing my husband. It makes you human and honest. Thomas was your past, Olivia. You are allowed to have a future. With you. If you will have me. I know it is fast, I know people will talk. But I am 31 years old and I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. Life is too short and too uncertain to pretend otherwise." Olivia stood and walked to the porch railing, looking out at Warren's thriving ranch, the result of years of patient labor and careful planning. This was a man who knew how to nurture things, how to take barren land and make it flourish. He had done the same for her, she realized. When she had arrived in Kansas, she had been as dry and cracked as her fields. Warren had irrigated her spirit, teaching her to bloom again. She turned back to him. "I do not know the proper amount of time to wait. I do not know what society expects or what is right. But I know that when I think about my future now, you are in it, not as a helper or a teacher, but as something more." Warren stood and came to her, taking her hands in his. "Then let me court you. Let me do this right, give you the attention and respect you deserve. We will take our time, let people adjust to the idea, and when it is right, we will make it official. You want to marry me. Olivia's heart hammered. Eventually, yes, if you will have me, but first I want to earn you to prove I am worthy of your trust. Warren lifted one of her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. You have been hurt by a man who did not value what he had. I want to show you what it is like to be treasured. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, the good kind that came from overwhelming emotion rather than grief. Yes, she whispered. Court me, show me, I want all of it. Warren pulled her into his arms then, holding her close, and Olivia felt safer than she had in years. This man was solid and real, someone who kept his promises and saw things through. With him, she could build something lasting. They stood together as the sun disappeared and stars emerged, the Kansas night wrapping around them like a blessing. The rains came 3 days later, sudden and torrential. Olivia woke to the sound of thunder and stumbled outside to see the seasonal creek running full and fast, water pouring toward her retention pond. The irrigation system did exactly what it was designed to do, capturing and directing the flow, filling the pond and feeding the channels. By the time Warren arrived, soaked from his ride over, Olivia was dancing in the rain like a child, laughing with pure joy. He swept her up and spun her around, both of them muddy and drenched and completely happy. It is working, Olivia shouted over the rain. Warren, it is actually working. Of course it is working. We built it right. He set her down but kept his arms around her waist. Rain ran down his face, plastering his hair to his head, and Olivia thought he had never looked more handsome. She kissed him there in the pouring rain, tasting water and happiness and the promise of things growing. Warren kissed her back with enthusiasm, and they might have stayed there indefinitely if lightning had not cracked nearby, reminding them to seek shelter. They ran to the house, leaving muddy footprints across the porch. Olivia grabbed towels and they dried off, still grinning like fools. The seed will germinate now, Warren said, rubbing his hair roughly with the towel. Give it 2 weeks and you will see shoots. The wheat will mature in time for a fall harvest if the weather holds. And if it does not, it will. I can feel it. This is your year, Olivia. The rain continued for 2 days, more water than had fallen in months. The retention pond filled to capacity, the spillway directing excess safely away from the fields. When the sun finally emerged, Olivia walked through her land and saw transformation beginning. The earth was dark and rich with moisture. The channels flowed clear and steady, and everything waited in perfect readiness for growth. True to Warren's prediction, shoots appeared within 2 weeks. Tiny green points pushing through the soil, wheat and corn beginning their journey toward harvest. Olivia checked the fields every morning, watching the progress with an intensity that made Warren laugh. You cannot make them grow faster by staring at them, he teased. I know, but I cannot help it. It feels like a miracle. It is not a miracle. It is agriculture, good planning and hard work paying off. Can it not be both? Warren considered, then nodded. I suppose it can. There is something miraculous about life, even when you understand the mechanics of it. August passed into September and the crops grew tall and healthy. Olivia managed the irrigation carefully, opening and closing gates to give each section the right amount of water. She developed an intuitive feel for it, knowing by looking at the plants whether they needed more or less. Warren continued to visit daily, though now his help was less about teaching and more about companionship. They worked side by side, but they also talked for hours, sharing dreams and fears and the small observations that made up a life. Warren told her about his hope to expand his ranch, maybe buy the property adjacent to his. Olivia shared her idea of adding chickens and maybe a dairy cow, diversifying her income sources. You are thinking like a real farmer now, Warren said with approval. not putting all your seed in one basket. I learned from the best. Their courtship remained chaste by necessity, both of them aware that Olivia's reputation was already strained by her quick recovery from widowhood. But Warren found ways to show his affection that did not require impropriety. He brought her wildflowers picked from his land. He fixed things around her house that needed repair. He made her laugh and listened when she needed to talk, and gave her space when she needed solitude. Olivia fell more in love with him every day, not with the desperate passion she had felt for Thomas, but with something deeper and more sustainable. She loved Warren's steadiness, his competence, his quiet strength. She loved how he never made her feel weak for asking questions or strong for succeeding. He treated her as an equal, a partner, and that was more romantic than any flowery declaration could be. In late September, Olivia received a letter from her brother in St. Louis, asking about her plans. Did she intend to stay in Kansas? Would she be returning to civilization? He could arrange a position for her if she wanted to sell the land and come back. Olivia read the letter to Warren as they sat on her porch watching the sunset. He thinks I am suffering out here, making the best of a bad situation. He has no idea how happy I am. Are you happy? Warren asked. Truly, it has been hard work and worry. Your hands have scars now and you have lost the softness you came here with. Olivia looked at her hands, at the calluses and the fading blisters, the evidence of labor. These hands have built something. They have changed land and grown food and created value from nothing. I am prouder of these scars than I ever was of my soft skin. She met Warren's eyes. Yes, I am happy. Happier than I knew I could be. Then stay. Make Kansas your home, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because this is where you choose to be. I do choose this. I choose the land, the work, the life I am building. Olivia reached for his hand. And I choose you, Warren Keller. If you will still have me. Warren pulled her close, kissing her forehead. I will have you any way you will let me, as a neighbor, as a friend, as a wife, whatever you are ready for. I am ready for all of it, Olivia said. I know it has only been 5 months since Thomas died and people will judge, but I have learned that life does not wait for propriety. You have to grab happiness when it is offered. Are you sure? I can wait longer if you need. I am sure. Thomas would not have waited for me if our positions were reversed. He would have moved on to the next thing, the next dream. I loved him, but I do not owe him my entire future. Olivia pulled back to look at Warren seriously. I want to build a life with you, properly, publicly, as husband and wife. I want to combine our ranches, share the work and the rewards. I want to wake up next to you and go to sleep planning tomorrow together. Is that what you want too? Warren's answer was to kiss her, deep and thorough and full of promise. When he finally pulled away, he said, That is exactly what I want. Marry me, Olivia. Let me be your partner in every sense. Yes, she breathed. Yes, absolutely yes. They married in October, a small ceremony at the church in Ellsworth with a handful of friends as witnesses. Olivia wore a simple dress of cream-colored cotton, her hair woven with autumn wildflowers that Warren had picked that morning. Warren wore his best suit, the same one from the dance, and his eyes never left Olivia as they spoke their vows. The minister was old and kind, pleased to be marrying a couple who looked at each other with such obvious devotion. Marriage is like farming, he said in his brief sermon. It requires patience, hard work, and faith. You cannot force it or rush it. You have to tend it daily, weathering storms and droughts, trusting that your labor will bear fruit in time. Olivia and Warren exchanged glances, smiling at the apt metaphor. They had already learned those lessons, had already put in the hard work. Now they were reaping the harvest. After the ceremony, there was a small celebration at the town hall. People came who had been skeptical of Olivia's quick remarriage, but were won over by the obvious rightness of the match. Even the gossiping women had to admit that Warren and Olivia seemed genuinely happy, and that Olivia had proved herself to be made of sterner stuff than expected. As they danced together, Warren said, "No regrets. Not a single one. You. Only that I did not find you sooner. But then, you would have been married and I would have missed my chance." "Everything in its right time," Olivia said. "We met when we needed each other most. That is what matters." They spent their wedding night at Warren's ranch, which would now be their shared home. Olivia's land would be managed as an extension of Warren's operation, creating a substantial combined property. In the morning, they would begin their life as partners. But for now, they simply enjoyed being together without work or worry hanging over them. Warren was gentle and patient, treating Olivia with reverence that made her feel cherished. She had known physical intimacy before, but this was different. This was two people choosing each other, giving freely rather than taking, and the difference transformed the act into something sacred. Afterward, lying in Warren's arms, Olivia felt a peace she had never experienced. "I love you," she said, the first time she had spoken the words aloud. "I love you too," Warren replied. "I have loved you since you showed up at my ranch looking fierce and terrified at once, demanding I teach you about irrigation. I knew then you were someone special. I was just desperate. You were brave. There is a difference." Warren kissed her hair. "You could have given up, gone back to St. Louis, accepted defeat. Instead, you fought for what was yours. That kind of courage does not come from desperation. It comes from character." Olivia burrowed closer to him, grateful beyond words for this man and this life. She had come to Kansas broken and lost, and through hard work and unexpected love, she had been remade into someone stronger. The wheat harvest came in November, and it was good. Not spectacular, but solid and profitable. Olivia sold her crop in Ellsworth, paying off the bank note with money to spare. The relief was overwhelming, knowing that the land was truly hers now. No one could take it away. Warren helped her plan for the next year, mapping out crop rotation and discussing whether to expand the cattle operation. They worked well together, balancing Olivia's detailed planning with Warren's practical experience. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Winter came, bringing a different kind of work. They maintained the irrigation system, repaired equipment, and tended the small herd of cattle Olivia had purchased. Snow covered the fields, but beneath the frozen surface the land rested and renewed itself, preparing for another cycle. On Christmas Eve, as they sat by the fire in their home, Warren gave Olivia a leather-bound journal similar to the one he had shown her that first day. "For your own observations," he said, "so you can record what works and what does not, build your own knowledge." Olivia opened it to find the first page already inscribed in Warren's careful handwriting. "For Olivia, who had the courage to learn, may your harvests always be abundant and your irrigation channels flow clear. With all my love, Warren." Tears blurred her vision. "It is perfect. Thank you." She gave him a watch she had ordered from Kansas City, a fine piece with his initials engraved on the back. "So you always have time for me," she said with a smile. Warren laughed and pulled her into his lap. "I would make time for you if the world were ending. You are my priority always." They spent Christmas quietly, just the two of them, enjoying the peace of winter and the satisfaction of a year well lived. Olivia thought about where she had been 12 months ago, newly widowed and terrified, and marveled at the transformation. Spring came again, bringing new planting and new possibilities. Olivia was pregnant by then, a development that delighted and terrified her in equal measure. Warren was over the moon, already planning improvements to make the ranch safer for a child. "We should fence the retention pond," he said one evening. "Once the baby is mobile, it will be dangerous." "We have months before that is a concern," Olivia laughed, touching her still flat stomach. "But yes, we should fence it. And maybe build a better barn, something we can use to teach our child about animals and responsibility." "Our child," Warren repeated with wonder. "I still cannot quite believe it. Believe it. By October, we will be parents." The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia suffered from sickness in the early months and exhaustion throughout. But Warren was endlessly patient, taking over more of the physical labor and making sure she rested. He treated her like precious cargo, which was sweet, but sometimes frustrating. "I am pregnant, not broken," Olivia protested one day when Warren insisted she stay inside while he worked the fields. "I can still help." "I know you can. But you do not have to. Let me take care of you for once." It was hard for Olivia to accept help after so many months of proving her independence. But she was learning that partnership meant allowing herself to be supported as well as being strong. She let Warren coddle her, and in return, she took over the bookkeeping and planning, contributions that were less physical but equally important. Summer brought another good harvest. The irrigation system continued to perform beautifully, and Olivia added notes to her journal about flow rates and optimal watering schedules. She was building a body of knowledge that would serve them for years. The baby came on a cool October evening after a long and difficult labor. Warren paced the floor while the doctor and midwife attended Olivia, helpless and terrified in a way he never was with crops or cattle. When he finally heard the baby's cry, he nearly collapsed with relief. The midwife emerged with a bundle wrapped in clean linen. "You have a son, Mr. Keller, and your wife is asking for you." Warren took the baby with shaking hands, looking down at the tiny red face in wonder. His son. He carried the child into the bedroom where Olivia lay exhausted but smiling. "We have a boy," she said weakly. Warren sat on the edge of the bed, showing her their son. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you." Olivia touched the baby's small hand, watching his fingers curl instinctively around hers. "We should name him after your father." William Thomas Keller," Warren said, honoring both their fathers. "It is a good name for a strong boy." Little William thrived, a healthy baby who seemed to inherit his parents' determination. He was not an easy child, demanding and willful, but Olivia and Warren navigated the challenges together, supporting each other through sleepless nights and trying days. As William grew, so did the ranch. Warren expanded the cattle operation, and Olivia's crops continued to yield well. They became known in the county as innovative farmers, always trying new techniques and sharing their knowledge with neighbors. The irrigation system Olivia had learned to build became a model that others studied and replicated. Life settled into a rhythm of work and family, seasons passing in their eternal cycle. 2 years after William's birth, Olivia had a daughter they named Clara, small and dark-haired like her mother. Then another son, James, born 3 years later when Olivia was 31. The house that had once felt empty and haunted became filled with life and laughter. Warren built additions to accommodate the growing family, and the ranch expanded to include chicken coops, a dairy barn, and extensive gardens. Everything Olivia had imagined that first desperate year came to fruition, and more. One evening, when William was 10 and Clara 7 and James 4, Olivia stood with Warren watching their children play in the yard. The retention pond, properly fenced, reflected the sunset. The fields beyond were green and healthy, the irrigation channels flowing steadily. "Do you remember that first day?" Warren asked, his arm around Olivia's waist. When you showed up at my place looking half dead from worry, I remember thinking you were my last hope. I had no idea you would become my whole life. I had no idea I was missing anything until I met you. I thought I was happy with just the land and the work. Are you happier now? Olivia asked, though she knew the answer. Warren pulled her closer, kissing her temple. I did not know what happiness was until you taught me. The land is still important, the work still matters, but it is all hollow without someone to share it with. You and the children, you are what makes everything worthwhile. William called to them then, wanting to show off how high he could climb the fence. Clara was making flower crowns, decorating her younger brother's head despite his protests. It was chaos and beauty, and exactly the life Olivia had secretly hoped for but never expected to find. We should teach them about irrigation this summer, Olivia said. William is old enough to understand the principles. Already turning them into farmers. They are growing up on a ranch. They should understand how it works, why we do what we do. Knowledge is something no one can take from them. Warren nodded. We will make it a family project. Build a small test system. Let them experiment and learn. The next summer, they did exactly that. Warren and Olivia guided their children through creating a miniature irrigation system in a small garden plot. William took to it immediately, his sharp mind grasping the concepts quickly. Clara was more interested in what to plant than how to water it, but she learned nonetheless. Even little James helped dig ditches, more hindrance than help but enthusiastic. Teaching her children what Warren had taught her, Olivia felt the circle completing. She was passing on knowledge and values, creating a legacy that went beyond land and crops. Her children would grow up understanding hard work and persistence, would know that seemingly impossible things could be achieved with proper planning and effort. Years continued to pass. The children grew, taking on more responsibilities around the ranch. William showed a natural aptitude for engineering, constantly thinking of improvements to the irrigation system. Clara developed a green thumb that rivaled her mother's, growing vegetables and flowers with equal skill. James loved the animals, spending hours with the cattle and horses, gentle and patient with creatures much larger than himself. Warren and Olivia grew older together, their love deepening rather than fading. They had their disagreements, of course, moments of frustration or miscommunication, but they had learned to navigate conflict like they navigated farming challenges, with communication and compromise. On their 10th anniversary, Warren took Olivia back to the place where her journey had truly begun, the western edge of her original property, where they had built the first retention pond. It had been expanded and improved over the years, but the basic structure remained. "Do you know what I think about when I see this?" Warren asked. "What?" "I think about courage. The courage it took for you to ask for help. The courage to learn something completely new. The courage to love again after being hurt." He took both her hands. "You were the bravest person I had ever met, and you still are." Olivia shook her head. "I was terrified every single day that first year. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it. You did that, and you changed both our lives because of it." They stood together watching the water flow through channels they had built together, a physical manifestation of their partnership. The sun set over their land, their home, the life they had created from nothing but determination and love. When William turned 18, he announced his intention to study engineering at the university in Lawrence. Olivia's heart broke a little at the thought of him leaving, but she was also fiercely proud. "You should go," she encouraged. "Learn everything you can, then come back and make this ranch the most innovative in Kansas. Or maybe I will make my own ranch," William said with a grin. "Build something from scratch like you and Pa did." "Either way, we support you," Warren said. Just remember where you came from." Clara showed no interest in leaving, perfectly content with the ranch and the small town. She was courting a young man from Ellsworth, the blacksmith's son, and Olivia suspected an engagement was imminent. James, at 15, was still figuring out his path, but he talked about breeding cattle, developing better stock suited to Kansas conditions. The ranch had become more than Olivia or Warren had imagined that first desperate year. It was a thriving operation that employed several workers, produced diverse crops and healthy livestock, and served as a teaching ground for modern agricultural techniques. People came from surrounding counties to see the irrigation system and learn from the Kellers' experience. Olivia kept meticulous records in the journals Warren had given her, now numbering 5 volumes. They contained not just agricultural data but also personal observations, family stories, the accumulated wisdom of years. She planned to give them to her children someday, a roadmap and a history. When Olivia turned 40, Warren surprised her with a trip to St. Louis. They left the ranch in William's capable hands and took the train east, Olivia's first return to her childhood home in nearly 20 years. The city felt alien now, too crowded and loud. Olivia walked streets she had known intimately and felt like a stranger. She visited her father's grave, long neglected, and made peace with the girl she had been who had thought a comfortable life was all she wanted. "I was so naive," she told Warren as they stood in the cemetery. "I thought security and respectability were what mattered. You were young. We all think differently when we are young. Do you ever regret it? The life we chose is hard. We could have had easier paths." Warren turned her to face him, not for 1 second. "Every callus, every early morning, every crop failure and cattle loss, all of it was worth it because I got to do it with you. Our life is not easy, but it is real and it is ours. That means everything." They returned to Kansas grateful for the distance from St. Louis, reaffirming their commitment to the life they had built. The city held no appeal, no draw toward comfort that could compete with the satisfaction of work well done and land well tended. Clara married the blacksmith's son in a lovely ceremony at the church, and Olivia gained a son-in-law she genuinely liked. The young couple built a house on the edge of the ranch property, close enough to help but far enough for independence. Clara continued to manage the gardens, and had started a small business selling seeds and seedlings to neighboring farms. William returned from university, full of ideas about mechanization and efficiency. He designed a new pump system that reduced the manual labor required for irrigation, though Warren was skeptical. "We have always done it with gravity and gates," he argued. "Why complicate it?" "Because this will free up time for other work," William countered. "Pa, you taught me to always look for improvements. This is an improvement." Warren looked at Olivia, who smiled. "He sounds like you know, stubborn and convinced he is right." "Fine," Warren grumbled, but he was secretly proud. "We will try it on one section. If it works, we expand." The pump system worked beautifully, and within 2 years they had upgraded the entire irrigation network. It was strange and satisfying to see her original system evolving, Olivia thought. Nothing stayed static. Everything grew and changed, just like people. James surprised everyone by falling in love with a girl from Salina, someone he met at a cattle auction. She was a rancher's daughter who knew as much about livestock as he did, and their courtship was conducted largely through discussions of breeding lines and pasture management. Warren found it hilarious, Olivia found it sweet, and James found it perfect. By the time Olivia and Warren reached their 20th anniversary, all 3 children were settled, 2 on the ranch property and William on a place of his own nearby. Grandchildren had started arriving, adding another generation to the legacy. Olivia found herself in the role of teacher again, showing her grandchildren the same lessons Warren had taught her decades before. How to read the land, how to understand water, how to work with nature instead of against it. The children were fascinated, and Olivia loved sharing the knowledge that had transformed her life. One afternoon, as she knelt in the garden with her oldest granddaughter, Clara's daughter Emma, Olivia realized how far she had come. From a grieving widow who knew nothing about farming to a grandmother passing on wisdom to the next generation, the journey had been long and sometimes painful but ultimately beautiful. "Grandma," Emma asked, patting dirt around a seedling, "how did you learn all this? Did you always know about farming?" "No, sweetheart. When I came to Kansas, I did not know anything. I could barely tell a weed from a crop." "Really?" Emma's eyes widened. "But you are so smart about everything," I learned. "Your grandfather taught me and I practiced until I understood." Anyone can learn anything if they are willing to work at it. Even me, especially you. Olivia hugged the little girl. "You come from a long line of people who were not afraid of hard work. That is in your blood." That evening, Olivia shared the conversation with Warren as they sat on the porch, their favorite spot for watching the sun set over their land. "She is right, you know," Warren said. "You are smart about everything. Sometimes I forget you did not grow up with this knowledge. It is so natural to you now. Only because you were patient enough to teach me, and because I was desperate enough to learn. It was more than desperation. You had genuine interest, a desire to understand not just how but why. That is what made you a natural." Olivia leaned her head on Warren's shoulder, comfortable in the silence that comes from years of companionship. They had built something remarkable, she thought. Not just a successful ranch, but a family, a legacy, a way of life that honored hard work and innovation while staying grounded in the land. "Do you remember what you told me that first day?" Olivia asked. "About irrigation being more than just moving water." "I said it was about reading the land and working with it. You said it was about understanding. And you were right, about more than just farming. Everything we built together came from understanding the land, each other, what we really needed versus what we thought we wanted." Warren kissed the top of her head. "You understood faster than I did. You knew what mattered. We figured it out together. That is what partnership is." As darkness fell and stars emerged, they sat surrounded by the fruits of their labor. The house full of memories, the land producing steadily, the family thriving across 3 generations. It was more than Olivia had ever imagined that desperate day when she had driven her wagon back to Thomas's failed farm. She had been looking for a way to survive. She had found a way to live. The years that followed were gentle ones. The rhythm of the seasons marked more by family gatherings than agricultural challenges. The ranch ran smoothly under the combined efforts of their children, and Olivia and Warren eased into the role of advisors rather than primary laborers. They traveled occasionally, visiting places they had always wanted to see. But they always returned to Kansas, to the land that had witnessed their transformation from desperate widow and lonely rancher into partners, lovers, parents, grandparents, and friends. On their 25th anniversary, the family threw a large celebration. Friends and neighbors came from across the county, testament to the respect the Kellers had earned through years of integrity and community contribution. During the party, Warren stood to make a toast. 25 years ago, I met a woman who asked me to teach her about irrigation. I thought I was just helping a neighbor. I had no idea I was meeting my future, my purpose, the person who would make every day better just by being in it." He raised his glass to Olivia. "You took barren land and made it bloom. You took a solitary man and taught him about partnership. You took hopelessness and transformed it into legacy. Everything good in my life traces back to you." Olivia felt tears on her cheeks as she stood to respond. "You told me once that farming requires faith. Faith that the effort matters even if the outcome is uncertain. You gave me that faith when I had none left. You showed me that I was capable of more than I believed, that I deserved more than I had settled for. You irrigated my heart, Warren Keller, and love grew where I thought nothing could." She lifted her own glass. "To 25 years and to however many more we are blessed with." The party continued late into the night, filled with laughter and music and the warmth of community. Olivia danced with Warren, with her sons and son-in-law, with her grandchildren who stepped on her toes and made her laugh. She danced with neighbors who had become friends, with people whose lives had intersected with hers across decades of shared Kansas living. As the celebration wound down and guests departed, the family gathered on the porch, children drowsy on parents' laps, the conversation soft in content. Olivia looked around at these faces she loved, thought about the blood and sweat and tears that had gone into creating this moment, and felt complete. Life continued its steady flow, like water through well-built channels. There were sorrows, the inevitable losses that come with time. Warren's health began to trouble him in his 60s, a heart that had worked hard for so many years finally showing strain. Olivia nursed him through difficult periods, repaying the care he had given her during pregnancy and illness. "I am supposed to take care of you," Warren protested weakly from his bed. "We take care of each other," Olivia corrected. "That is how this works. You taught me that." He recovered, though never quite to his former strength. Olivia took over more of the physical work again, her 70-year-old body still capable though not as resilient as it once had been. The children worried, urging them to do less, but both Olivia and Warren needed the work, needed to feel useful and connected to the land. They celebrated 50 years of marriage surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, a legacy that numbered in the dozens. The ranch had been divided among the 3 children but remained a cohesive operation. The irrigation system expanded and modernized but still based on the principles Olivia had learned that first desperate summer. 50 years, Warren said as they cut the cake. "It does not feel that long." "Every day," Olivia agreed, "but also forever, like you have always been part of my life." "I have been the best part of your life," Warren teased, "the second best. The land itself was the first." Olivia smiled at his mock offense. "But you taught me to love the land, so I suppose you get credit for both." They laughed together, the easy laughter of people who had weathered every storm and still stood strong. Warren passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 years later, his hand in Olivia's, his last words a whispered, "I love you." Olivia grieved deeply, but without the desperate, hollow feeling she had experienced with Thomas's death. Warren had given her everything he had, held nothing back, and she had done the same. Their life together had been complete, and though she would miss him terribly, she had no regrets. She spread his ashes over the land he had loved, near the retention pond where it had all begun. The family gathered, sharing memories and tears, celebrating a life well lived. Olivia continued alone for several more years, still active though increasingly fragile. She walked the irrigation channels daily when weather permitted, checking flows and gates with practiced eye. She spent time with her journals, adding final observations and reflections, wanting to leave a complete record for future generations. One warm afternoon in early summer, Olivia sat on her porch watching her great-grandchildren play near the pond. Properly supervised and safe behind the fence Warren had insisted on decades ago. The field stretched green and healthy, water flowing through channels that had been rebuilt and improved, but still followed the original design. Everything she and Warren had built together continued to thrive, maintained by loving hands and minds that understood the value of what had been created. She opened her journal, the one Warren had given her that first Christmas, now worn and filled with decades of notes. On the last blank page, she wrote a final entry. I came to Kansas a widow, broken and desperate. I learned about irrigation and in the process learned about myself. Warren showed me how to cultivate the land and how to cultivate love. The greatest harvest of my life was not wheat or corn, but family, partnership, and the satisfaction of work well done. May whoever reads this understand that the principles of good farming apply to good living. Prepare the ground carefully, plant with intention, irrigate consistently, and have faith that your efforts will bear fruit. Everything grows in its own time. She signed it, dated it, and closed the journal, satisfied that her story was complete. Olivia Keller passed away that night in her sleep, peacefully and without pain, in the house she had shared with Warren, on the land they had made flourish together. She was 83 years old, survived by 3 children, 11 grandchildren, 17 great-grandchildren, and a legacy that would endure as long as water flowed through the channels she had helped build. The family buried her next to Warren, under a simple stone that read Olivia Langford Keller, 1848–1931. She cultivated the land and love grew. The funeral was attended by hundreds, people whose lives she had touched, whose farms she had helped improve, whose struggles she had understood and eased. In the years that followed, the Keller Ranch continued to prosper. The irrigation methods Olivia had learned and refined became standard practice across Kansas, improving yields and helping farmers survive droughts that would have devastated earlier generations. Her journals were preserved, studied, and occasionally quoted in agricultural publications. But perhaps her greatest legacy was simpler and more profound. 3 children who grew up understanding that effort mattered, that knowledge was power, and that love required cultivation just like crops. Grandchildren and great-grandchildren who knew the story of their grandmother's transformation from grieving widow to successful rancher, who understood that circumstances did not define you, choices did. A family that stayed connected to the land, that valued hard work and innovation, that honored the partnership of the 2 people who had started it all. The retention pond still held water, the channels still flowed, and the land still bloomed under the care of people who understood its value. And if sometimes, on quiet summer evenings, workers swore they could see 2 figures walking the irrigation lines together, checking gates and flows, well, perhaps that was just wishful thinking. Or perhaps love, like water, followed channels worn deep by time and use, flowing eternally through the landscape it had shaped and been shaped by. The story of the widow who studied irrigation methods and the rancher who showed her how to cultivate love became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. It reminded them where they came from, what was possible with courage and hard work, and that the greatest harvests often came from the most barren beginnings. Water still flowed through the channels Olivia and Warren had built together, nourishing the land, sustaining the family, a living testament to what 2 people could create when they worked as one. The land bloomed eternal, and love grew wherever it was properly tended, just as it always had, just as it always would.